To Seth also was a son born, and he called his name Enosh. And at that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord. Don't miss those three awesome words. At that time. At what time? At a time of wickedness, where sexuality was going sideways, where marriage was being redefined, where people were bragging that they were greater than God, Kanye West, and there was all kinds of new gadgets and new music and a tech boom. It's that kind of time. And a lot of us, we look at our culture and we say, this is a terrible age in which we live. Wickedness and sexuality and redefinition of marriage and people bragging that they're greater than God and tech booms and music. Listen, this is page 4 of the Bible. And yes, there are ways in which things just keep rolling and steamrolling as more and more of us live and more of the sin becomes rampant on our planet. But when we look at these stories and we hear about how wicked it was, that it's so easy for us to point our fingers. And this is why I'm always a little bit uncomfortable with this phrase. I know some of you have used this phrase, and I've used this phrase. I feel more uncomfortable with it these days. The phrase that says, love the sinner and hate the sin. Now, I'll tell you why I'm uncomfortable with that phrase. And I know the heart behind it, and I think there's a lot of great things behind it. I really do. When you say, love the sinner, hate the sin, you're unintentionally saying that sinner, that guy's sin. And it zeroes in on that one sinner right there. And you're just talking about him. And you say, I'm going to love him even though he's sinning. And it fails to account for the fact that sin is crouching at all of our doors. It's easy for us to point our finger at Cain and say, at least I'm not like Cain. Really? What do you know about Cain? You know the story of the worst day in Cain's life. How would you like to take the worst day of your life, the life where you committed the greatest sin that you've ever committed, and have it written down in a book that for thousands of years, billions of people will read about your one sin and make a caricature out of you? We point our finger at Cain. At least he brought an offering to God. 20% of people who say they follow Jesus this weekend at church will do what they always do. They won't give anything back to God. At least Cain gave. He brought an offering. It's easy to point our finger at Lamech and go, that guy had 2 wives. Yeah, he had sex with 2 women after he married them. How many people have you had sex with outside of marriage? And I'm not even counting the porn you surf for on your iPhone. It's easy to point our finger. And when we say, love the sinner and hate the sin, we're just pointing a finger. That's why I like a little derivation of it. It may sound like I'm just playing with words. This is what I like. Love people, hate sin. Love people, all people, just like God did. Loved Adam, loved Eve, loved Cain, loved Abel. Love people and hate sin. Not just that guy's sin, but all sin, because you've seen the devastation of sin on your neighborhoods and your communities and our world and your family and your life because of your sin. Because sin is crouching at all of our doors. And try as he might, Cain could not figure out a way to overcome sin. And even when God warns him, and God warns him tenderly, he still kills his own brother. And with his brother's blood, it was shed. That blood spoke of anger and this out of control depression and sin and judgment and consequences. And that's why it's so beautiful that we're reminded in Hebrews 12 that Jesus is the mediator of a new covenant, and his sprinkled blood speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Jesus' shed blood on the cross for us speaks of forgiveness and justice, which was poured out on Jesus, and consequences for our sin, which were poured out on Jesus. and mercy and grace and forgiveness. And so instead of pointing our finger at that guy who does that sin, let's just declare the good news of Jesus, who never sinned and took all of our sins, and place our faith in him and him alone.